What was the motivation behind Lucy Letby's crimes? In today's video, we take a look at a recent article which discusses 6 possible motives regarding the case of Lucy Letby, after which I'll be sharing some of my own thoughts and opinions. Here is everything we know about the possible theories behind Lucy Letby's year-long killing spree from June 2015 to 2016. From the accusation of being a calculated opportunist to playing the role of God and trying to grasp the attention of a male doctor whom she allegedly had a crush on. The calculated opportunist. Prosecutor Nick Johnson KC said Letby was a calculated opportunist who used the vulnerabilities of premature and sick babies to disguise her chilling acts. Her seemingly normal behaviour persuaded many colleagues that the collapses and deaths were normal. During 2015 and 2016, there was a significant rise in the numbers of infants who suffered serious and unexpected collapses in the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital. Letby was the only member of the nursing and clinical staff who was on duty each time the collapses happened, which the Crown argued were not natural events. Number 2. Playing God. Johnson also said Letby was playing God during her trial by harming babies and then being the first to alert her colleagues to their decline. After her final murder of child P in June 2016, she said to a doctor, quote, "He's not making it out of here alive, is he?" The neonatal nurse had earlier attacked the infant and he died soon after. Letby had made similar comments in 2 previous murders. Johnson told jurors, quote, "She knew what was going to happen. She was controlling things. She was enjoying what was going on. She was predicting things that she knew was going to happen. She, in effect, was playing God." Number 3. Besotted with a doctor. The prosecution suggested Letby was infatuated with a married doctor at the hospital and was having a secret relationship with the man who cannot be named for legal reasons, but is referred to as Dr. A. They claimed he was her boyfriend, but she repeatedly denied this and insisted, quote, "I loved him as a friend, I was not in love with him." It was said she would call him when the baby suddenly deteriorated to get his personal attention. After she was removed from the ward, the two continued to meet outside of work for coffee and restaurant dates, shopping trips and a visit to her home where she lived alone. The first time Letby appeared to be visibly distressed during her trial had nothing to do with her victims. It was the moment her alleged former boyfriend appeared in court to give evidence against her. She tried to leave the dock, claiming to feel unwell. But Nicholas Johnson replied, "No, it's because you didn't like hearing your boyfriend giving evidence, did you?" Number 4. A thrill from killing. Parents and nurses described Letby acting unusually when the baby she killed or tried to murder suddenly declined on the ward. The parents of child I told police they remembered her, quote, "smiling and going on about how she was present at child I's first bath and how much she had loved it." She also searched for the families of her victims on Facebook on the anniversaries of their deaths. In evidence, Letby said she would search for all sorts of people and not just the parents of babies on the unit. Nicholas Johnson KC suggested to Letby that she was getting a thrill out of watching the grief and despair of parents and colleagues. She denied these claims and told the court that she was, quote, "trying in that awful situation to have some positive memories." Letby said, "It wasn't meant with any malice. We still talk to babies. We still treat them as if they were alive." Number 5. Not good enough. Evidence pointing towards the former nurse included a number of handwritten notes found in her bedroom at home. One green post-it note was presented to the jury. Letby wrote, quote, "I don't deserve to live. I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them. I am a horrible, evil person. And in capital letters, I am evil. I did this." Nicholas Johnson KC invited the jurors to read the note literally as a confession. Ben Myers KC, representing Letby, explained the note was the anguished outpouring of a young woman in fear and despair when she realises the enormity of what's being said about her. Letby later said in evidence, quote, "I felt I must be responsible in some way. I think looking back on it now, I was really struggling, and this was a way of me expressing what I wasn't able to say to anyone else. And number 6, a covert narcissist. One psychologist who was not involved in the trial and did not present his suggestions in court has since shared his possible theory behind the killings. Lecturer in criminology at Loughborough University, Dominic Wilmot, told a newspaper that Letby was a covert narcissist and said she may have been motivated by a pathological desire for attention and sympathy. Okay, so the first point that I'm going to touch upon is the idea that this all revolved around Dr. A, the fact that she was besotted with a doctor. Now, this has been touched upon by people who have appeared on TV and psychologists, this, that and the other, who appear on these sort of TV shows. And I think for someone who's just taken a glance at this case, they may well think, well, hang on a minute here. Was Lucy Letby simply doing this to gain the attention of this doctor who she fancied? But what people, or many people I should say, don't realise is the fact that these attacks started before Dr. A was even working at the Countess of Chester Hospital. From what I can gather and from what I've been told, I don't know if this is actually true, but he didn't start at the hospital until around September of 2015. So yes, on the face of it, you can take a look at this case and think, well, is there something in this regarding the Dr. A situation? Is that why it was so important to the prosecution's case? Does this give a motivation as to why Lucy Letby attacked these children? In my opinion, no, it doesn't. What I will say, however, is that I can't exactly count out the possibility that when this friendship or whatever formed with this Dr. A, that this didn't form part of her motivation or an added bonus for Lucy Letby in attacking these children, in that she would get the attention, the attendance of these doctors when these children would collapse. So yes, it could form part of the motivation further down the line, but it certainly wasn't the initial instigator as to why Lucy Letby started carrying out these attacks. Now, back to the situation of Dr. A in general. Many people have said, well, why were the prosecution talking about Dr. A? Why were they bringing up the text messages? Why was it that important? Well, first of all, it wasn't really that important to the prosecution's case. It wasn't as if this whole case revolved around this fantasy relationship between Lucy Letby and Dr. A. That's not the case. In my opinion, this was brought in by the prosecution to kind of discredit Lucy Letby, the individual. It wasn't a case of, well, okay, these attacks have happened and Dr. A has attended. This is why you've done this, isn't it? It wasn't put across like that. In my opinion, the whole Dr. A situation was introduced by the prosecution in order to break down Lucy Letby's credibility as an individual. Because you would see these text messages shown on the screen, exchanging love hearts and this, that and the other, and dates out, nights out together, shopping trips, restaurant visits. This doctor even offered to lend her his car when she fainted, and he would go over to her house, all this sort of stuff. Bearing in mind it's a married doctor that we're talking about here, who was quite a lot older than Lucy Letby. But the fact that they just kept presenting this evidence, it wasn't done all in one go. You'd be talking about a certain case, and then all of a sudden a message from Dr. A would pop up on the screen. And then they would talk about that, and then it would move on to another case, and then another message from Dr. A would pop up on the screen. So it wasn't as if the prosecution solely focused on this relationship. They would sort of add in these messages every now and then. And then by the end of the trial, you got a fairly good idea that there was something between Lucy Letby and this married doctor. Now again, this is pure speculation here, but it started to become more and more evident. And the more messages, the more dates that were shown to have taken place, the weekend away or whatever it was, the night away, the day away to London, the trip they had together, all these little pieces of information started to form a bigger picture here. That actually, are we looking at someone who is just a complete and utter liar? Who is saying, well, of course I wouldn't have a relationship with this individual. He was a married man. I simply liked him as a friend. Yet then you were shown pieces of paper with, I loved you, this, that and the other, I think you knew that. All this evidence was just piling on top of each other and really, in my opinion, was simply an attack on Lucy Letby's credibility. Another point worthy of mention is that it wasn't simply the overall content of these messages between Lucy Letby and Dr. A that caught my eye, and I'm sure the jury also took notice of this as well. But it was the fact that this guy had a wife, he had children. I assume he still does. And they were exchanging messages sort of 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, these fun, flirty text messages, to a point where one of Lucy Letby's other colleagues texted Lucy Letby and said, "Oh, what's Dr. A said? Go commando." And Letby replied with 4 like hysterical laughing emojis. And Nicholas Johnson said, "What did she mean by that? Go commando." And Lucy Letby said, "I don't know what that means." So it's by no means important, evidentially speaking, to the case of Lucy Letby or the case against Lucy Letby. It was more of a case of being shown something and Lucy Letby denying its existence or denying the obvious. And you would sit there looking at this individual who was clearly telling a pack of lies because she knew what Go Commando meant. She didn't say to her friend in that text message, "What do you mean by that? What does that mean?" She replied with 4 hysterical laughing emojis. I mean, I would imagine that most people know what Go Commando means. And yeah, it didn't really form part of the prosecution case in terms of evidence against Lucy Letby. It was more of an attack on Lucy Letby's character and her credibility. The next point that I'm going to discuss is this idea that Lucy Letby conducted or carried out these attacks for sympathy or to gain attention in general. I think that may form part of the reasoning, but I don't feel that it gives us the complete picture of Lucy Letby. The reason that I say that is because when we take a look toward the end of this case, where Lucy Letby is changing up her methods of attack, and she's even committing some of these attacks just as she's about to leave work, and sometimes during the staff handover when another shift would come in and other individuals would be there, it didn't strike me that it all had to be about Lucy Letby. Maybe at the beginning you could say that. But I wonder if Lucy Letby is actually a lot more calculating than many people believe. And the reason that I say that is because when I look back at the text messages and the way that she would conduct herself after these children collapsed or subsequently died, I wonder if she was sending these messages like, I just wonder that I'm not good enough. I just worry that I've missed something. Whether she was just sending out feelers to get a gauge on what these other individuals' impressions of her actually were. Were suspicions beginning to rise? Does this person suspect me of anything? Because when she gets that reassurance, this sort of, "Oh, Lucy, no, you did brilliantly. You did absolutely brilliantly." This is, these are the sort of messages that Lucy would get back from her colleagues, and in particular Dr. A. "Oh no, Lucy, you did brilliantly. I'd let you look after my own children," and this, that, and the other. And then she would just sort of go, "Oh, okay, no worries." And then that would sort of be the end of the conversation. And I wonder if all of this was just about gauging what other people thought about her. Were they suspicious? Do I have to pull back a little bit here? Have I gone a little bit too far this time? And as soon as she gets that reassurance, she's fine. "Oh, okay, no worries. Thank you very much." And off she goes. And I wonder if she is that calculating, that it's not all about her. It doesn't always have to be about her. But she needs to know from people who are around her that they don't suspect her. So she sends out those little feeler messages. "Oh, I just wonder that I've missed something. I just wonder I'm not good enough." And then, as I say, as soon as she gets that reassurance, "Oh, okay, I can carry on." This also leads me on to the Facebook searches that Lucy Letby conducted of the parents that she had harmed. Now, in court, there was something that stood out to me. And again, this was on the last day of Lucy Letby's cross-examination. And Nicholas Johnson said to Lucy Letby, "Well, here you're searching for 2 or 3 sets of parents, one after another. There's like a 1 or 2 minute gap. Why have you searched for these parents specifically?" And Lucy Letby, typical of her with her non-answers, replied, "Well, because they were babies that were on my mind." And he said, yes, but why those parents specifically?" And she said, "I don't know, I can't answer that." And he said, "Is it because these were the parents that had almost caught you in the act?" And she said, no. And it was clearly on a few occasions where Lucy Letby was almost caught red-handed. These were the occasions that he was referring to, and these were the parents that Lucy Letby had searched for one after another. And it was at this point where Lucy Letby had realised that the hospital had suspicions about her. And the first thing that she did was conduct these searches for these parents. Again, more circumstantial evidence here. But it led me to thinking, well, why did she do these Facebook searches? I think a lot of it was simple voyeurism, in that she wanted to relish in what she had done, the damage that she had caused. And I think she really got off on this idea that nobody really knows who I am. Nobody really knows the real me. It made her feel superior in a lot of ways, that she could pull the wool over these professionals' eyes, doctors, upper management, her friends, her family. On the outside, she's a very different person. A very, very different person. And she played that role to all of these parents. So at this point in time, when Lucy Letby is conducting these Facebook searches, the parents have a very different view of Lucy Letby. And I think she enjoyed looking back and not sharing their grief, but looking at what she had caused, and maybe even, if you want to just put a bit more of a calculated edge to these Facebook searches, maybe she was even looking at their Facebook just to see, is there any mention here of the hospital doing anything wrong, or anything suspicious, or anything that just doesn't feel quite right about their Facebook? Was she looking just in case that, these parents were going to make some sort of complaint, possibly? Because I don't get the impression that Lucy Letby was searching compulsively. It wasn't an addiction for Lucy Letby. The reason that I say that is because she's not searching for, say, child A 10 times a day or every single day of the month. Yes, she would search sometimes one day after another for a few days, but then she could go months without searching for a certain parent, and these Facebook searches would only usually be one or two on the days that she would do them. It wasn't as if she would go onto her computer, do the Facebook search, do something else. Oh, I need to go back and look at child A, and I need to go back. You didn't get that impression. So to me, there's a reason behind why she did this. Possibly for the voyeuristic satisfaction of looking, as I say, at what she had caused, but also possibly because she's looking just in case that the parents are saying, hang on a minute, there's something a little bit strange, or we're going to go to the hospital about a report, we're going to file a report to the hospital. It's just something that didn't feel quite right. I wonder if there was a little bit of a calculated edge, again, to Lucy Letby's Facebook searches. So in terms of a motive, I find it really difficult to actually pin down one specific part of Lucy Letby's character that compelled her to cause or to harm these children. But there are two things that stand out to me. And again, this is just my own viewpoint here. I'm not here to convince anybody. It's just my own opinion. The two things that stand out to me about Lucy Letby is, number one, I feel that she liked to feel superior to other people. She liked to portray a certain image, but actually she was someone very different. She liked to trick and manipulate people who were above her, doctors, upper NHS management, even her friends and family, even her other colleagues, the people that were on shift with her. She enjoyed that rush of pulling the wool over other individuals' eyes and getting away with it on countless occasions. She also enjoyed the aftermath, I believe. The fact that she would then sort of chuck out these little feelers, these little feeler texts, just to say, oh, have I done something wrong? Have I missed something here? And then as soon as she gets that reassurance, no, Lucy, you're a great nurse. Of course you didn't do anything wrong. That would have heightened her sense of self. That would have heightened her ego, and it would have given her the confidence to continue these attacks. So I feel that is all in one sort of circle. Now, recording this video, I've literally just remembered something which I haven't shared so far in my videos concerning my experience in court. An exchange has come to me which took place between Nicholas Johnson and Lucy Letby. And I wonder if this does play into this case in some way, shape or form. And it was at the point where Lucy Letby was told not to come in for her night shift. So her manager had called her and said, we don't want you in for the night shift, we're going to move you to days, etc. And Lucy Letby had a very, very over-the-top reaction to this. And Nicholas Johnson was trying to say, well, yeah, you were having this reaction because they were onto you, weren't they? And you knew that they had suspicions about you at this point in time. And Lucy Letby said, no, not at all. And anyway, Lucy Letby was clearly having a complete meltdown. This was shown in the text messages that she sent to both her colleagues and Dr. A. I'm having a dramatic meltdown. And Nicholas Johnson said, why were you having such a reaction? Just a mere text message was enough to send you into a dramatic meltdown. And Lucy Letby said, yes, yeah, because this is not normal. This is not normal. And Nicholas Johnson said, babies collapsing isn't normal. Babies dying isn't normal. Yet when we go through this case, we are told on numerous occasions that you're very cool. You're very calm. When these incidents happen and these babies collapse or they die, you're very controlled. You're very calm. And Lucy Letby's response was, yeah, yes, because this is personal. That this is something, and it was the way that she said it. It always stands out to me. Thinking back to it now, how she said those words. I'll have to go back and take a look at my notes so I can get exactly what was said. But yeah, I remember distinctly that Nicholas Johnson said, "Well, why did you behave like that? And yet you've been described as someone who's very cool, very calm and collected when these incidents happen." And then she said, because this is personal. That's literally, because this is personal. And then I think she realised what she had said. She said, because this is personal. This is my social, this was my work life. She sort of, it was weird the way it came out. Like I say, I'm going to have to touch upon this in a future video. But that did stand out to me. Anyway, the point of what I was saying there is that Lucy Letby was very cool, calm and collected when these occurrences happened. When the children were collapsing or subsequently very ill, Lucy Letby was a calm, steady pair of hands. And I remember on one occasion, one of her colleagues was quite distressed and she had to be taken outside to sort of compose herself. And I think Lucy Letby got something from that. The fact that she was this person who could stand up in a crisis. Not so much a hero complex, but I think she got something from that. She knew because what she had caused, she knew what to expect, she knew what was going to happen, she could anticipate it. She was cool, calm, collected and ready to take action. Whereas some of her colleagues found it hard on occasion to deal with. And her sort of rising above her, not competitors, but her colleagues, showing that she could be a stable, calm, collected head in those crisis moments. I feel that after these events took place, she took something away from those, most definitely. Anyway, let's move on to the final topic. Now, this is to do with something which many people won't know actually exists in this case, as if this case isn't bad enough as it is. But for me, there was a real desire for Lucy Letby to cause these parents the most amount of psychological damage possible. That's the simplest way that I can put it. Because this case on the face of it, as I say, is terrible. But when you take a look at some of the smaller details as to which victims she chose, the parents' circumstances, and also the day in which she conducted these attacks, forms an impression from my perspective that Lucy Letby was hell-bent on causing as much chaos and destruction to these parents as humanly possible. Let's take the example of baby D for one moment. Now, this child was attacked on Father's Day. Of all days, on Father's Day. Baby G, this baby was an IVF baby, born at almost 24 weeks, and attacked on its 100th day of life. Now, this wasn't just simply this child's 100th day of life. This was an occasion which was celebrated on the neonatal units. They had balloons, they had banners, they had baked a cake for this celebration of this child's 100th day of life. And what does Lucy Letby do on this day? She chooses to attack child G. A celebration of a child's 100th day of life. Can you imagine that? Attacking baby D on Father's Day. And then twins child A and child B, Lucy Letby's alleged first two victims. Now, this is taken from the Mail podcast. Lucy Letby also told detectives that she knew baby A and his twin sister baby B were much wanted babies, and his parents had waited a long time for them. The interviewing officer then asked, "Who told you that?" And she replied, "It was known through the nursing handover." She was then asked if that sort of information would change the way that she would deal with parents, and she said, "No, I would like to think that we treat all parents the same, but you bear in mind what they've gone through to get to this point." So clearly, these parents have waited quite a long time to conceive child A and child B. Did she choose those parents in particular? And then we take a look at the cases towards the end of the indictment. The fact that she attacked triplets. Was she trying to take out or kill all three of those individuals? Nicholas Johnson said in court, "Did it give you a thrill?" Did it give you excitement to think that you were going to kill each of these triplets? And she said, oh, no, absolutely not. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because a lot of these children in this case were almost like little miracles in many ways. Many of the children in this case had medical vulnerabilities, and as I touched upon just then, many of these children were simply miracles to begin with. But from my point of view, this didn't just stop at causing harm to the victims themselves. This was about causing as much psychological harm and devastation and grief as humanly possible to the parents of these poor children. Now, the final point I wish to make in this particular video goes back to this idea of Lucy Letby and how she is perceived by other people and how she gained pleasure from tricking and manipulating other individuals. I want to touch upon the sympathy card. This was a card which was given to one of her colleagues, and this colleague was attending the funeral of one of the children that Lucy Letby had murdered. Lucy Letby filled out this sympathy card and she took a photograph of it and kept it on her phone. The photograph of this sympathy card was taken at the place in which Lucy Letby carried out these attacks, the Countess of Chester Hospital. Now, again, on the face of it, you could say this is simply someone who wishes to relive their crimes, wishes to remember what they have done. I mean, Lucy Letby's explanation for why she had this on her phone was, well, I take photographs of birthday cards, I take photographs of other cards. But for me, it has a more sinister purpose. Now, again, as I say, you could say this is someone who wishes just to simply relive their crimes. But I feel, especially where this sympathy card is concerned, that this is someone who kept this on their phone to look back on and think to themselves, these parents truly believe I'm this person, this kind, compassionate, hard-working nurse that wouldn't harm a fly. This is who you believe I am. And I think over the course of time, this was something that she really gained something from, this idea of manipulating people, feeling superior intellectually, that I can pass myself off as a calm, cool and collected character, compassionate, someone who's got a lot of empathy for people's circumstances and situations, and all the while I'm fooling all of you. I'm completely fooling all of you, people who are my peers, people who are above me, people who are close to me. In my opinion, again, just my perspective here, she gained something from that trickery, from that manipulation. And the reason, part of the reason I should say, as to why she would have kept that sympathy card, was simply to remind herself how other people perceived her. This kind and caring nurse. Let me know in the comment section what you believe the motive to be. Do any of those 6 motives that I read out earlier, do any of those resonate with you personally? Do you believe that they form part of the basis for these attacks? Or are we looking at a combination, a number of factors in the motives for these murders? Let me know in the comment section below.